to TLC, where we dive into the heart of our local community, its wineries, restaurants, business, and real estate. Hi there, I'm your host Troy Anderson, along with my co-host Pamela, and we're here to bring you a new perspective on what's happening in our community. This week we also have a special guest. He's kind of a legend. Greg Lill with Chateau Lill from Woodinville area. Welcome to the show, Greg.
Well, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited for this conversation. I've heard great things about you and your wine, so I can't wait to get on with this.
All right. He's brought us like 4 wines.
I know. We're going to talk about all of them, and we're going to jump straight into our first segment, which is Sipping on Success, where we get to sample these delicious wines that Greg has brought in for us. So, Greg, tell us a little about this offering that you have here for us.
Sure. We've got a little bit of our Lill family wines, we call them, at Chateau Lill, and this is our Lill Bebe Rose. Lill Bebe Rose, yeah. And then we've got our Lill Sister Chardonnay as another white offering here. Mm-hmm. We have our Lill Brother Cabernet Sauvignon, which is a 2019, which we're just actually releasing this weekend, so we can talk about that. That'll be fun. And then we've got kind of our most famous wine, our Baron de Massy, which has quite a story to it, which we'll probably get into later.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so I'm just going to say, news alert, tell us again, the wine, the Cabernet Sauvignon.
It's the Lill Brother Cabernet Sauvignon 2019 vintage.
And it's releasing this weekend.
This weekend, yes.
Yeah, so you heard it here first on TLC, that new release.
Nice.
Yeah,
nice.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're starting off with the rosé.
I did. I poured some rosé and the Lill Bebe Rose. Okay. Beautiful bottle, great color to it. It's dark.
I know. I was just looking at this. So we've tried some other rosés, and this is like the most vibrant color I've seen yet, and I love it. It's just got this. It's not a jewel tone, but it's just got this real rich vibrancy to it. How did you get it that vibrant?
Well, to start off, the first thing I really need to say is what we do at Chateau Lill and Lill Family Wines is kind of different than what a lot of other wineries do. Mm-hmm. As many people know, I helped found the Lill Cellars back in 1992. And when we started Lill Family Wines as a secondary brand, really designed to be wines for the events we have at the Chateau.
Okay.
Because the Delot wines were kind of getting a little pricey. We wanted to make wines that were in a better price range. So all of our wines are in the $20 to $50 price range.
Okay.
Great.
And I didn't want to get back into boots, barrels, and berries and all of that. Done that, been there, done that. Got the t-shirt, got the hat. And so I went out to my friends in the Woodinville wine country, other wineries and winemakers that I know, and asked if they would make the wines for us. And every single one has always said, yes, I'd love to do that. That sounds like so much fun. So we work with a handful of winemakers, and this Lill Bebe Rosé was made by Chris Gorman.
Okay.
So it's from Gorman Winery. It's different than what they have. But they make their rosé in what they call a kitchen sink style, in the sense that any of the reds that came in that they feel would work well to work as a rosé, they go ahead and use that. So it's actually like probably 12 different grape varieties in this rosé.
Oh, that's fun.
And what I like about it, and you mentioned the color, is I like that salmony color in a rosé, but sometimes it's almost too light. You know, I like it when it has a little bit more kind of, like you said, a jewel tone to it, which, and I think they're kind of spot on with this. And it's just a great, refreshing, summer drink for a day like today, for sure.
All right, well, let's dive in. Cheers,
cheers.
everybody. Okay, what do you what should we expect from this wine from a taste standpoint? Obviously, everybody's palate's different, but what do you think people should?
Well, one thing people need to know is that this is a dry rosé. Mm-hmm. It's not a sweet rosé. It's not a white zin type of thing. And really most rosés that you're going to find from especially your Woodinville wineries, I don't even know if anybody makes a rosé with any sugar to it. I think they're all dry.
Pretty much.
And so this has just got that classic, strawberry, melon, a little bit of a, what's that white jasmine flowering you see right now, a little bit of that I think going on.
Yeah.
And it has, and because it's made with 13 different grape varieties, it actually has a lot of complexity on the palate. It's not a flat, not a one-dimensional kind of rosé. There's kind of a lot going on.
Yeah. Now,
you have good legs too.
Yes, it does. We're swirling our glasses, and we can see there's no. Troy, you have more of a discerning palate than maybe I do. What are you tasting in this?
It's the same thing. It's got a It's got a great dry finish, and then it's not doesn't like totally dry your mouth out, but it's just kind of slowly eases into it.
Yeah. For me, that first sip was kind of silky.
That's,
which
yeah,
is
that's
a
it.
really maybe a weird way to describe a wine, especially one that has a dry finish to it. But it kind of just enveloped the tongue. It was almost like you get a really good milk chocolate and it just kind of melts it on your tongue. It was kind of like that for me. And the flavors are delicious. Somebody on a show recently called it rosé. Was it Summer in a Glass?
Summer in a glass, yeah.
This, I would say, is definitely Summer in a Glass.
Yeah.
It just has all of those notes of like being outdoors and the strawberry fields, and that's what I'm getting.
You know, and for
Good stuff.
rosé too, I think it's got what I don't get in a lot of rosés, it has a really long finish.
Yeah, it does.
You know,
it does.
those flavors kind of go on and on and on, and which you don't usually get that in a rosé. And again, I think that's that complexity of all the different grape varieties that are in here.
That's really good.
I know, I'm just like, every sip is just getting better. I mean, not that the first one was bad, the first one was great, but I'm like, okay, the second sip is just, it's mellowing on my tongue, and it's delicious. I could stop right there.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic.
It
It's
really,
got really good
great.
flavor. And what's the price point on this one?
$20 a bottle.
Okay, that's great.
Okay, so that's really accessible for people too.
Yeah.
So I like the idea that, you don't have to go that high level just to get a really good bottle of wine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can imagine drinking it on the back deck of the Chateau Lill.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
You can do that every Friday through Sunday.
All right.
Okay, wonderful.
Make
All right.
reservations.
Okay, so that's the red. I would definitely buy that. Absolutely. Sitting in my
Good
back
stuff.
garden. Yeah. All right, so what else do we have here then? So we've got the Chardonnay. We'll open a red. Kind of tell us about the complexities of this wine.
Well, again, the Chardonnay, this is also a wine made by Chris Gorman. It happens to be from him. This is similar to his Columbia Valley Chardonnay that he makes. It's got a couple little tweaks to it that we've made to make it a little bit different. Retails for about $25 a bottle. My lovely bride Stacy, she loves Chardonnay, and so there had to be Chardonnay in the lineup.
Yeah.
And we actually have two Chardonnays in our lineup. The one we brought here, and then we have another one. And she prefers a little bit more of the oak style versus the clean, crisp style.
Okay.
So it's going to lean a little bit more towards that. It's not a big butter bomb. It's not cougar juice. It's not
Okay, you might need to explain the cougar juice to me. I don't think I understand that
it's
one.
not Housewife's crack.
That's right up there with Porch Pounder.
Okay, so we have a new one.
Well done now.
But it's again, it's got a little bit of that richness to it, but it also has it's got a lot of flavor going on to it. It's not one of those. It's not a Chardonnay you're going to stumble through.
Right.
It's going to have some focus to it and some finesse to it.
Okay, all right. So while we're chatting about these wines, Troy is going to open the
I'm
Cabernet
going to open the
Sauvignon.
Lill Brother.
So we can try that. Let me move some space for you there, Troy.
I know, it gets tight in here.
Well, we've got so many great options here to try.
know,
I mean,
right?
I'm not sure we're going to get through all four of them on the show, but while we're sitting here, I'm looking at the labels on these bottles because I'm big on kind of like how things look and the feel of them, and they're very different the way that you've actually packaged them. Style of the bottles is kind of reminiscent of what you would expect, but why such a difference in the label design for these wines?
There's kind of two trains of thought on that one. Some wineries will have a very consistent label design and label pattern because they want to have that. People will remember that look. That's that winery's wine because I know that label.
Right.
And others like to mix it up and do things differently. With the rosé, is kind of has these little what look like little pink cherry blossoms because we have the pink cherry trees lining the driveway coming up to the chateau.
Right.
So in the spring, when you're usually breaking out that first rosé, is when we have those beautiful cherry blossoms on the driveway. The Lill Sister Chardonnay has basically got a little bit of a kind of a relief of the chateau that we have over in Woodinville. Lill Brother Cabernet, again, we just something a little bit different. A fleur de lis on the label, which is kind of part of our family crest and things. So again, just trying to make them all a little bit different, because wines are different, and they're never homogeneous. And the fact that we're always working with different winemakers. We worked, as I said, today we have a lot with Chris Gorman going on, but we've worked with Chris Sparkman from Sparkman Cellars. We've worked with Morgan Lee at Two Vintners. We've worked with Matt Loso at the Winemakers Reserve. Just working with these different folks, and by making those wines kind of different, it kind of allows them to feel a little bit more a part of that project with us.
Right.
And what we do at Chateau Lill, when we're pouring our Lill family wines, is we tell people this was made by Chris Gorman. You should go to his, if you like this, go to his winery. You should go check it out. And so of course Gorman and Sparkman and those guys love that.
Yeah.
That we kind of cross promote that way. But it kind of makes it fun, and it kind of gives us a different story than what everybody else is doing.
Oh, I like it. There's definitely I feel like a European vibe to a couple of these bottles, and something different coming over here just from the style of the labels. I just think it's interesting. It's, all right, Troy, you got the Cabernet Sauvignon open for us.
And
all right.
I was reading the back. It's 100% Cabernet Sauvignon from Red Mountain. So good stuff. And who's the winemaker on this?
This one was Matt Loso.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in the Winemaker's Reserve.
Okay.
Great.
All right, should we give it a try?
Let's give it a try.
Okay. All right. Cheers.
Cheers on the red.
Okay, now what can we expect from this?
It's nice and dark.
The aroma is really kind of soft, but in a really good way. It's like sometimes you get that kind of really a nose full of it, and this just kind of peaks in there, and you're just like, oh, this. I'm intrigued to see what this is going to taste like.
Yeah, it does have. I want to kind of go back to your earlier comment on the rosé. It has a silkiness to it, even in the aroma. A lot of times with Cabernet, when you first pop up the cork and taste it, it can be a little rough and a little, almost a little numb in the nose, and then shows up later in the glass. Where this one, I get it right away in the glass. It's obviously got a good dark color to it. 100% Red Mountain is it's such an interesting thing because Red Mountain is really the warmest, hottest place to grow wine grapes in Eastern Washington. When you watch the news tonight, and they show the weather of the state, and Red Mountain is right next to the Tri-Cities. And the Tri-Cities will always be 1 or 2 degrees warmer than Yakima, Walla Walla, definitely Wenatchee or Chelan. And it's those couple of degrees which really can make the difference between a wine being ripe and ready versus not quite there. And with Cabernet on Red Mountain, because of that ripeness, I think it gets past the harsh tannins and past the big monster chewy side of Cabernet, and finishes in this silky softness that I can taste in the wine right away, and it's just such a really unique place, and even for our DeLille wines, one of the wines we make is called the Four Flags. It's from 4 different Cabernet vineyards on Red Mountain, and you'd think it'd be just this monster of a wine, and it's actually really soft and just tastes delicious.
Yeah, I mean, you're a red wine connoisseur. That for me is just really soft finish to it.
It's almost got like a creamy.
Yeah, that silky, creamy.
It's very good.
Listeners, it is really good. But you mentioned there kind of right out of the bottle. Now, quite often, you're supposed to leave the bottle breathe for a little bit, depending on how quickly you want to get to it. But I feel like that one, you don't need it to breathe per se, because it just has that smooth feel right from the get-go. It
does have a ready-to-go flavor to it. And I think if you did, opened it earlier and decanted it, let's say, there's one thing I'd like to tell your listeners is that, just pulling the cork really that's not breathing. That's like... it's like
the wine surface area is the size of
it's
the
actually
wine.
So small. You really need to get down to this to where you get some air. So when I tell people, I say, if you want the wine to breathe, either put it into a decanter, or if you don't have a decanter, and a decanter can be anything.
Yeah.
What you pour the wine into, it could be a pitcher.
Yeah.
What you pour the wine into, you're not going to drink it out of the pitcher. You're going to drink it out of a glass. The glass is what you want proper. Don't worry about what you're putting it into, the vessel. But if you don't have any of those, again, just pour out a glass so you at least get the wine up down below what we call the shoulder, so that back to that broadest part of the bottle. Now it's breathing.
Okay.
Now it's breathing. And you can even shake it around a little bit if you can. It's even better.
All right.
Really?
Well, you probably knew.
Tips.
I know. I'm looking at you like, did you know that, Troy?
Sort of.
Probably knew some of it, but I'd never heard that before. I thought basically you had to open the bottle, let it breathe, or decant the whole thing. But being able to just take one glass out and have that be, not like the best
and
route,
again, if you're going to decant, which is basically just pouring that bottle into another vessel to aerate it to get it, opened up. If it's a young wine, you literally can just take it and go chug, 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 chug. Because you want all that air and you want all that to happen. The other reason for decanting wine is if it's a very old bottle of wine and it has sediment in it, and you don't want the sediment to get into your glass or your decanter, and then you pour very, very slowly, hoping to catch that sediment in the shoulder before it's going out with the wine.
Right.
And the other interesting thing, or thing that can be tricky with older wines, if you decant them, they can be great for 10, 15 minutes, and then all of a sudden,
They turn
whoosh,
fast.
they turn, they're gone. All of a sudden, typically the fruit goes away.
Yeah.
You know, and now you're just, and it doesn't mean the wine's gone bad, but it's now different than what you had and what it was really designed to be.
Okay.
So it just becomes something different. And it's always, whenever we're doing an older wine, there's always that little bit of like, okay, should we hurry up and drink this because it's going to go off the cliff, or is it going to maybe get better?
Right. Sometimes
You
it
know,
gets better.
and you just, you don't know. I mean, if it's a 10-year-old wine, you're probably going to be fine. You know,
Right.
if it's a 20-year-old wine, if it's California Cabernet, especially here, Washington Cabernet, you're probably going to be okay. You know, you get past 25, 30 years, no, we don't quite know where we're going to end up.
Right. So I think we should backpedal on something real quick where you said, chug, chug, chug. You're not talking about people chugging it and drinking it. You mean pouring it into
Yes,
a vessel.
chugging it into the vessel, which is not your throat.
I'm just, if somebody is listening rather than watching, I just wanted to clarify that we're chugging it into, so pouring quickly into another vessel to aerate it, to help speed that process.
And vigorously.
Yes, vigorously. I like that
Yes,
word. Yeah,
yes.
absolutely.
Well, this is very delicious.
I know.
And the price point on this?
It's 35.
Okay.
So good. Still
Yeah,
a good,
that's
affordable
relatively
price
good.
point for people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're not jumping off that cliff of that
For
really.
a Red Mountain Cabernet, 35 is not
That's
Yeah,
that's
I
a
would
great
just
price.
like
That's a pretty good Tuesday wine.
for sure.
I love this idea that there's a Tuesday wine. There's a
Pizza wine.
yeah, but yeah, you would expect the flavor of this to be much more expensive in my limited, kind of experience of wine. But that to me tastes like a much more expensive wine.
Okay, if we raise the price, I'm going to say you told me to.
No,
No. Until
Yep.
after we get in there and get some.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is all absolutely wonderful. So we're going to continue to enjoy this wine, but we're going to take a really quick break. And when we come back, we're going to dig into more details about Greg
Chateau
and
Lill.
Chateau Lill. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after this very short break.
Hey there, homeowners and home buyers. If you're looking for a real estate team who genuinely cares about your needs, Tend Home Team is here for you. We're not just focused on making sales, but on building long-term relationships with our clients and serving our wonderful community. Whether you're buying or selling, let us guide you through the process and help you achieve your real estate goals. Connect with Tend Home Team today and discover a better way to navigate the market. Welcome back to TLC, 10 Life Community Podcast. We're going to dive right in here to the segment and talk about everything Chateau Lill with Greg Lill today.
Yep. I'm looking forward to this conversation. We've dug in quite extensively.
I
in
know,
the first part.
our little wine section was a little bit longer than we normally do.
I think that's
with,
perfectly acceptable.
with the audience in the room here today, it's definitely appropriate. So,
Yep.
So Greg, can you take us back to the beginning? How did you start in the wine industry? What inspired you to establish Chateau Lill? And anything else you want to tell us?
Yeah, it's an interesting real estate story. It started with where the chateau is right now, about 10 acres, and my father was in the insurance business back in the day. As I followed him into that business as well after school, and he, one of his clients was the woman that owned that property, and she was going through a divorce, was in a little bit of money trouble, needed some money. My dad loaned her some money but said, you have to deed the property over to me, and when you pay me back, we just give it, settle it back to you. Mm-hmm. Well, she never paid him back, and then she kind of disappeared and tried to sell the property to somebody else. Oops. And ended into we paid originally for that property in 1983 roughly. My dad gave her $30,000 as the money she needed, which was a lot of money back then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the property back then, I'm not a real estate, a little bit, but it's probably worth $250,000, $300,000 back then, because it didn't have the chateau; it just had a house and two barns. Okay. And then she tried to sell the property again to somebody, and we had a $15,000
Deed trust.
vacate the property type clause. So that person forced the sheriff's sale to have her removed from the property. So he got our $15,000. So our total investment in that property is about $45,000 at the time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which was a pretty good deal.
Pretty good deal.
I
And
would
then
say
we
so.
fixed up the house, started working on, it was just a rundown farm at the time. And probably spent then at that time another like $75,000 just remodeling the house and fixing
Okay.
some things up. And it was just a rental house. And my dad wanted all the ponds that you've seen on the property are all natural run. They're not pumped around. It's all water coming off the hill. So we rebuilt all of those. Spent a lot of money, and my dad was kind of scratching his head saying, we got to come up with something, a business that we can have on that property to generate some income to offset all the money we're spending. So Greg, why don't you figure something out? And so I looked. I knew a guy that was a wine broker, and he had a buddy that made wine. So we looked at winery, looked at restaurant, looked at B&B, whatever. Winery seemed to make the most sense. It was in our family history back in France, going to the 1200s. That's where the
wow.
de Lill name comes from. And so we decided to go the direction of winery, and I'll never forget, we were, it was in the fall of 1991, because our first vintage at de Lill was 92, but we were, my parents have a place in Hawaii, and we were sitting there around Thanksgiving, and Dad said, hey, bring your business plan about this winery idea you have. And so
No pressure.
yeah, no pressure. So it's like the second or third night in, I make sure he's got a couple of glasses of wine or Mai Tais or whatever. And I have him read the business plan, and he says, okay, we'll talk about this after dinner. And I'm thinking like, oh, this could be really good, or I might be on a flight home tomorrow. And so after dinner, he goes, I read Greg's plan about doing this winery idea out at the farm in Woodinville, and he goes, I think it's a great idea. I think we should do it. It honors our family history. I think it makes sense.
That's cool.
It's not that expensive. I think it's something we should try. And then my dad looks at my mom, and my mom says to my dad, well, Dad, if you think Charles, if you think it's a good idea, then I'm game. And they look at my older sister Pat, who's 3 years older than me, and she says, well, Mom and Dad, if you like the idea, and Greg, you wrote the plan, then I guess I'm in. And they look at me, and I go, well, I vote no. And they look at me, it's a true story, and they look at me and they go, Greg, why are you voting no? This is your idea. I said, no, this is great. The three of you have outvoted me to do this. So if it works, great. And if it doesn't work, I can say, I told you not to do it. So I'm off the hook. So
That's a great story.
that's
That is
literally
a
how it
really
started.
great story. That was smart, but it all worked out.
It all worked out.
Okay, all right. So, so that's the story of the actual chateau. But talk to us a little bit more about kind of the story behind the creation of the wines, and kind of where you started with that wine development. The beginning to where we are now.
Well, with de Lill, was trying to do a Bordeaux style blend. Nobody was really doing that in Washington State, and so we decided that was going to be kind of the direction we went. And we, one of the things back then, there was only in 1992 we were the 86th winery in Washington State, and we were the third winery in Woodinville. And today there's 1,200 wineries in Washington State and 120 or so in Woodinville. And we at the time we hired David Lake, who was the master of wine winemaker at Columbia Winery. And that was really instrumental, because when we went walking into the vineyards, people, who are these guys? But we were with David Lake, and David says, these guys are doing it right. You want to sell them fruit, and that really helped get us to the front of the line with some of those different growers. And, grew de Lill, and about 9 years ago, a private equity firm out of New York came to us and made us one of those offers we couldn't refuse, but we still all kept a little piece. So I still have I'm the largest minority shareholder in de Lill, let's put it that way still. And but then when we wanted to start, this other Lill family wine brand, like I said, I didn't want to get back into buying all the equipment and all of that. And like I said, I know so many great winemakers in the valley, and they all were more than willing to do this as a project for us. And it's really been fun, working with the different winemakers, and it kind of keeps our winery fresh, because it's, the Cabernet next year might be from somebody else. Or the rosé from next year might be somebody else, and so it's never kind of the same old, just another year.
Right.
It's always something new. We're always looking at a new, different wine to make.
I love that, and it props up the the local community, the winemakers in the community, and just gives back into the industry.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that idea. So, I guess the next question then is, how do you decide, right, on which winemakers you're going to use to build those wines that then represent who de Lill is? Chateau Lill. What's your process? How do you decide who you're going to entrust one of these babies with?
Well, again, most of those winemakers I mentioned earlier are winemakers I know and they're friends, and most a lot of people may not know, most large wineries, I mean, I say large, but a Sparkman, a Gorman, somebody that's making 3, 4, or 5,000 cases or more a year, that there's always some barrels in the cellar that's grapefruit from a great vineyard that they just had real aspirations for, and when they would try to blend it into their Cabernet, or because most wines, even though it says Cabernet on the label, if it does say that, it only has to be 75% Cabernet for starters.
Right.
And secondly, it can come from various different vineyards as long as it totals more than 75% or more Cabernet. And there's always typically 4 barrels or 6 barrels of Cabernet from this great vineyard that Chris Sparkman or Chris Gorman thought would be great blending into his Cabernet. And when he blends it in, it just doesn't fit. It takes away from what's there. Where every time when you're blending and you're adding another piece to that blend, you want to take that wine to the next level. You want to have another layer of flavor. You want to have you want to have a positive step, not a negative step. And so you end up, and at Delot we had this. You end up with those 6 barrels or 4 barrels which just didn't fit anywhere. And it's not enough wine to make a separate whole nother wine or SKU, because it's not enough to fulfill your wine club, let's say, or anything like that, because it's only 100 cases or 150 cases or maybe 200 cases. And so those are the kind of things I always ask them, say, hey, what do you have that you love but isn't fitting? It's kind of one of the first questions I always ask. And a lot of times they go, and again, the other part is that when you contract as a winemaker, when you contract with a grower, you say, okay, I want 10 tons of Cabernet from your vineyard here. And you never really know until you pick up how much you're going to get. 2021, everything was low. And so you were hoping for 10 tons, you got 8. In 2022 was a heavy year. So you were hoping for 10 tons and you got 12. And so now all of a sudden you got 2 tons more than you really needed, and you it is still a business, and you go, hey, every year I know I can sell this much Cabernet, can I sell another 200 cases of that? That I've never made that much, and so they're like, hey, Greg, if you want to buy those 200 cases, that'd be great, and so those are kind of the ways we collect our wines.
Okay.
Are those called? Well, when they're in the bottle, it's called a shiner, right? Where it's
unlabeled. Before you put a label on it, it's a shiner,
Yeah.
correct? Yeah. So a lot of times they'll bottle it up because they kind of have to. It's gotten to that point, and then they don't put a label on it until they did. I don't know what I'm going to do with this just yet. So so sometimes we buy it as shiners, sometimes we buy it right out of the barrel. It just depends on what part of the process they're in and what they have.
A shiner. I learned something today.
Yeah,
I had
you
no
learned a
idea.
couple things.
I've learned lots, actually. I need to go make notes.
I'm impressed, right?
So, education, absolutely.
So let's talk about this one, the Baron
Massy.
de Massy Cabernet.
Yeah, Baron de Massy is a kind of a long story, and it just recently had a kind of an exciting new twist, which I can't talk about. But about 7 years ago, I did a lunch down at Ray's Boathouse, and it was sponsored by the State Department, and they were bringing up constituents from Washington, D.C. to the Northwest to learn about companies in the Northwest, businesses in the Northwest that their respective countries could work with potentially and generate income, business trading stream. And did a lunch, poured our wines. This lovely woman comes up to me after the lunch. She goes, gosh, I loved your wines. I loved your story. Everything you did was fantastic. And I was just wondering, I'd like to feature your wine at an event I'm doing, 6 months from now. This was in May, so it was going to be in October. And she turned out to be the ambassador to Monaco.
Oh, wow.
And it was for the Prince Albert Foundation Awards.
Okay.
And so, long story short, they featured our wines for the Prince Albert Foundation Awards down in Palm Springs at the Annenberg Estate. And from there, we met Prince Albert and his wife, and all of a sudden the embassy in Washington, D.C. would use our wines for all their events that they would do. And we kind of developed this great friendship and relationship with the ambassador and with Prince Albert. And Baron de Massy is Prince Albert's first cousin. And he has the trademark rights to anything made in the United States that has Monaco on the label. And he didn't have a wine. And so he asked Prince Albert, hey, do you know anybody in the United States, could you talk to the ambassador that could make me a wine so I can check that box and have wine covered up on my trademark rights? And so they reached out to us and asked if we would do it. And we said, of course we could. And this is their designed label that they came up with and everything. And I told him, I said, to do this, for it to make sense, I have to go to one of my partner winemakers. It's got to be at least, 100 cases to to bother with, and that's going to cost you X. With a fair amount of zeros after that one, and and I said it was like $50,000 or something, and I said, you can do that, or we'll go ahead and make the wine for you. I'll sell you 2 cases. I just have to show interstate tracking and shipping, and then you've got your trademark rights, and then let us keep the rest of the wine, and we'll sell it at the winery as one of our offerings at the Chateau. And he said, I like that idea much better.
Less zeros.
Yeah, less zeros. And so there you go. That's where the Baron de Massy
That's a
comes from.
phenomenal
That's a
story.
cool story.
Yeah, very, very cool. I love it. Okay.
And it's I see it's a red blend, so
Yeah,
it's
Chris Gorman made this wine for us
Okay.
again. It's mostly Cabernet, but some Merlot, a little bit of Cabernet Franc, and a little bit of Petit Verdot.
okay. So sticking with the Bordeaux style
Yes.
blend.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, it's a bigger, comparing to this 19 that we're tasting, I think it almost has a more muscular framework to it, I want to say.
Okay.
It's a 2020, so it's 1 year newer than the 19.
Okay.
And that might be some of that a little bit. Because the 19 we ran out, and so Chris made some of the 20 for us. It's a fun wine. We kind of like to joke, you can drink like royalty.
I like that. It should be a slogan. It should be a slogan.
sure.
Now, you said it has more of a muscular kind of. What do you mean by that? For those people that are listening and maybe don't know very much about wine.
I think when we tasted the Cabernet, the 19 Cabernet, it has that softness to it, and that richness. When I say muscular, it's when it goes into your mouth, you're gonna. You don't taste really tannin, you feel tannin. It's something that you feel on the side of your mouth, and if you don't know what that really is, next time you have a Cabernet, and if you're having it with a steak, a good protein like that, put that piece of steak in your mouth and put the wine in your mouth with the steak and chew it, the wine and the steak together.
Are you telling me to do the things my mother said never to do?
No.
Drink and eat at the same time?
Yeah. But if you're chewing that piece of steak with that red wine in your mouth, kind of sloshing around, the wine will change dramatically, and that's the protein in the steak
Really?
reacting to the tannin, and the tannin is what really comes out. And and when you try the wine without the meat and then try it with the meat, and you'll go, okay, that was something very different. That was the tannin.
Oh, okay. Might need to try that at some point.
Strong cheese will do the same thing.
Or really like a really sharp English cheddar or something like that.
Or like a Parmesan kind of.
Parmesan
Or
with
what's
wine.
I do, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know.
just little nibbles even.
Okay. All right.
Or what's that cheese that's got the crystals in it? It's Dubliner.
Well, actually, any really good sharp English British cheese will have those salt crystals in them. Yeah. So,
Yeah, something like that.
Anyway,
for
we're
sure.
talking about food again. You're going to make me hungry.
I know.
All right, let's change tacks just a little bit. The wine we've not that we've covered it, but there's so much more that we could talk about. But let's talk about the chateau itself.
Yeah, it's a beautiful facility. On 10
So
acres there.
What's that?
It's on 10 acres, right?
Just about, yeah. Just shy of 10 acres. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've not been up there, but it sounds beautiful. And, picturesque setting. Tell us a little bit more about what happens up at the chateau. You host events. I don't want to tell our audience. I want you to tell the audience what delights can happen up there.
Well, there's a lot. We can do one thing that's interesting about the chateau property is it's almost 10 acres, and so you definitely can go from the chateau in the front to a little bit of a farm feel in the middle to a little bit of the northwest natural woods and beauty in the back. We have several different ponds and a gazebo up in the woods surrounded by these cedar trees. We move down to the farm area where we've got cashmere goats in one pasture and alpaca in the other pasture. And then you're down into the chateau where it takes on a little bit more of a European feel to everything. So in one place you can have 3+ different feels. And I always tell a lot of times of people that are looking at our site for an event, it's a good problem and a bad problem, because the bad problem is like, well, how do I decide where I want to do what I want to do? And the good problem is you've got choices.
Yeah.
And in the summertime, obviously, we're heavy on weddings. Pretty much every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, May through September, we have a wedding. We had a wedding Monday of this week, so they're even sporadic there. And in the summertime, when we have the weddings, we do our wine tasting outside of one of the barn areas where the cashmere goats are. So our
that's fun.
tastings in the summer are outdoors under tables with umbrellas, with a view of the valley, and it's actually a beautiful.
It's a
big
great
willow
view up
tree.
there.
I'm done. Can we go?
Yeah. We should have done the podcast there.
We should have done the
Yeah,
podcast.
yeah.
Next time.
And then after September, when we get into the winter months and the weddings start to slow down, we move the tastings in the chateau in the grand room in front of the big fireplace, and which is always fun. But we do other things like corporate events. Obviously corporate events. Birthdays. Celebrations of life. Retirement parties, whatever it may be. And the one interesting question I always ask people is I say, one thing that's interesting is we do a handful of Boeing plane delivery dinners every year. When they build planes for a certain airline, when they deliver the last plane, they have a kind of a ceremonial dinner and everything. And we tend to pretty much almost always do Asian or Eastern European airlines. And I always, why is that? And that is because since we are a private facility, we're not a public facility like a restaurant or a hotel or something like that. We're a private facility. Inside at our chateau, you can smoke cigarettes or cigars. And Asian and Eastern European cultures still smoke cigarettes a lot. And so they tend to do those dinners at our place.
Oh,
Wow.
that's
I didn't know that.
No, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. All right. So we want to make sure that listeners know, it's not just weddings there. So it's corporate events, it's birthday parties, it's basically anything anybody can imagine.
Exactly.
Really. Team building exercises, all of that kind of stuff.
We're having a chamber event there coming up.
Oh.
Yeah, we usually have a monthly chamber meeting there every year.
Yeah.
And then again, the nice thing, since we're a private facility, you can bring your own caterer. You can bring, we ask that you buy a little bit of our wine, but you can bring in other alcohol. You can there's really a much larger breadth of freedom at our facility versus if you were to go to if you want to do your event at the Willows Lodge, which is beautiful, fantastic, great food, but you're using their chef, you're using what's on their, you're not able to bring anything in. It's their world that you have to work in. Where with us, it's like, okay, we unlock the doors, we turn on the lights, tell us where you want our furniture to be set, and the rest of the place is yours, and do whatever you want.
That's fantastic, because I think you can be fairly limited on some of these venues at times. It feels like, okay, you're taking something that's very personal, an event that's whatever the celebration is, but somebody else is kind of challenging you on what you can or can't do. So I really like that you give people the freedom to really make it their own.
Exactly.
I like that. I mean, how much does the chateau influence kind of your designing of your wines or the building of your wines? I mean, it's a fantastic location. I mean, I've driven by it, so I know where it is. But, how much does that influence what you create?
I mean, obviously with the labels, we've done that with the rosé and with the Chardonnay. We did it a little bit with we had a Syrah, but we sold out of it, that Morgan Lee made for us from two vintners, and we called that Sir Charles Syrah because Charles was my father's first name.
Okay.
It's my middle name, and it's also our dog's name. It's
Oh.
Charlie. So on the label, there's a little picture of the family crest. There's a picture of a dog bone, and there's a picture of the
fun.
chateau. So
Maybe
That's
it should
cool.
be, King Charles III or something.
Yeah, what's it going to be next year?
Who knows?
Yeah, we'll probably still do Sir Charles. The label will stay the same. We'll just have to find who's going to make it for
Who's
us.
going to make it now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that a last minute process, or is that something you start thinking about now?
It's something we start thinking about, early on, usually about a year out. It's kind of like you need to start sourcing, and people know what they have or what they don't have. You never know. Like I said, it was tough with 2021 because everybody was short on what they had, so a lot of the wines were limited. 2022, there's much more of it. So as we move into the 21s for the reds, it's going to be a little tough, and so we're having to search it a little bit deeper, and we may broaden that search a little bit, and I might even go to some of my friends in California if I can't get enough
wow.
here. I'll have to see.
Okay.
But 2022 is a bumper crop,
Right.
so we don't have to worry about that at all.
Good stuff. I wonder what 2023 will hold.
Exactly.
Yeah, who knows? What's the growing season like?
It started off a little behind with the
Yeah,
cooler
seemed like
spring, but Mother Nature always seems to catch up.
Yeah.
But you really don't know until we get into the beginning of August.
Okay.
First, second week of August on the red wines. The white wines you'll start to get a pretty good idea, but the red wines you kind of start to gauge the berry size and how things are looking.
Gotcha.
But it's not an exact science.
Yeah, I mean, it is science, but not exact.
No.
It's not like baking a cake.
Yep.
And harvest is somewhere the end of September through October, right?
Yeah, well, the whites will start at the end of August.
Okay.
Some of them, again, it depends on how we end up, with the season. If we have a really warm growing season, we'll definitely start by the third week of August on some of the whites.
Okay.
And be done by, third week of October maybe. Like last year, for instance, down in Napa Valley, I talked to my friends, and it was so hot down in California, they were done by the middle of September.
Wow.
Which is just unheard of. You kind of like to go late is possible because you get that additional hang time.
Sure.
Helps develop some of those flavors, in the fruit. So in a perfect world, you're going to the middle to the end of October, with your red wines. But
Yeah.
we'll just have to see what Mother Nature brings us.
I feel like I'm having a little bit of a masterclass here in, how to grow grapes for wine
I know.
and everything else surrounding wine.
Like I said, Greg's a legend.
He sure is, yeah.
So is there anything else in the works with Chateau Lill that you
That you
can
can
share
tell
with
us?
us? Yeah. Any upcoming projects or anything?
Yeah, we've got actually the next week we've got a series of we have the wedding on we have this wedding on Saturday, and they're bringing a band out from Nashville,
Oh,
and the gal that's getting married, her father is a businessman here in Seattle, so he said, well, if I'm going to pay for this band to come out, so they're having a corporate event on Tuesday. The 1st of August.
1st of August, yeah.
And then the next night, my wife Stacy, she has a charity. It's called O Wines that she basically was making wine or was having wine made for her by Columbia Winery, and it's called O Wines because it's the O stands for Opportunity for Success, and she takes the net proceeds from that wine and gives it to the College Success Foundation, which does college scholarships for at-risk girls. And she's
that's
been
great.
doing that for, 10 years. And I think she's got close to 80 girls she's put through 4-year full ride college
That's cool.
through the scholarships. And so she's having a O Wines concert on that, I think it's that Thursday, which would be the 3rd.
With the same band.
Or no, the 2nd, the 2nd. Because there's the one on Tuesday night, one on Wednesday night, and then the wedding's on Friday night. But it's
Okay.
all the same band out of Nashville. So if anybody wants to come to, I think there's still some tickets available for her concert on
Okay.
on Wednesday night.
Oh, right.
So you
okay.
go to, if anybody's interested and you hear this, just you can email me directly. It's really easy. It's just my name, greg@greglill.com.
That's easy to
fine.
remember.
That's very easy, yep.
GREGLILL.com.
I already have your email address, that's great.
Okay.
All right, community involvement I think is next up, Troy.
Yeah,
right? What do
community
you wanna-
involvement. We heard a little bit about it. Is there any other things that Chateau Lill does to engage the local community? I know I see you all the time
Yeah.
doing this and that. You serve on the board for the Woodinville Chamber.
Yeah, we're always open to, we do a handful of charitable things at the Chateau. It's one of those where, if somebody wants to do something on a Saturday in July, probably can't do that. We probably have
Right.
a wedding, but if you want to, we're a little bit like Vegas, our pricing can go up and down pretty easy. So, if you want a Saturday in March for your charitable event, we, typically what we do is we charge for what the cleaning fee and basically what our costs are to put on, to have you have your event there. And then we don't charge anything else for the cost of the room and things like that. So we do a lot of that kind of stuff.
That's nice.
That's awesome, that's good to know, yeah.
Yeah.
I can't decide which one I want to drink next. I've got the red here and the rosé, and I'm like one after
Double
the other.
fisted over.
If that's what you want to call it, sure, let's go with that. All right, so let's just change tacks just a little bit. We're always interested in hearing about people that are live and work in Woodinville, what they find so appealing about Woodinville and what their hidden gems are so that we can share them with our listeners. So do you have some hidden gems or some places, restaurants, whatever that you frequent on a regular basis that you love and would love other people to know about?
Gosh, we've actually lived here for quite a long time, and the hidden gems, we have 10 acres where we are. We've got these beautiful ponds and the gazebo in the back.
Why go anywhere else?
So we kind
Why
of
leave home?
when we want to maybe leave home, and we live right next door on 2.5 acres, so we'll walk
Right.
from our house over to the gazebo and just plop, a bottle of wine down with some cheese and some bread and pretend like you're in Europe and just, the alpaca come over the fence and look at us like, gee, you're going to give us some food. And it's, that's kind of our hidden gem, and it's one of those things that, one thing that we recently just did, we kind of stumbled across this and we've been doing it, and it's something called Sniff Spot. And what it is, it's for people that have dogs, but that maybe have moved and live in an apartment or a condo, or their dogs don't do well with other dogs in a dog park or whatever. And so we've opened up one of our pastures at the Chateau. It's about 1.5 acres as a sniff spot. Wow. And people can go into sniffspot.com and you could click on our site and you could reserve, a time to have your dog come out and run off leash in our pasture. And it's been kind of fun.
Wow, that's cool.
It's been kind of
no idea. That is brilliant.
You've got a dog now.
I do. Yeah, we were looking after a dog. That is brilliant.
It's really kind of a cool thing, and you book it through Sniff Spot, and it's $10 a dog per hour or something like that, and I think we get half of it or something like that, for our troubles. But it's really kind of fun to watch people come out, because we have a dog, so it's fun to watch people come out and they're running around with their dog, and their dogs are just racing up and down the pasture, and just having a blast, and everybody's just going like, this is great. I wish I would have. We just started this in May.
Oh wow!
And
so
it's been
sniffspot.com.
SNIFFSBOT.com.
Cool.
That's awesome.
How do you find that?
I just stumbled upon it somewhere reading something, I think on GeekWire I saw
Okay.
it. And I
knows where you
went, I
find
wonder
that
what,
stuff,
what that is, and I clicked it on, and because being, you may not want me to say this, Troy, but being a landowner, we've got 10 acres, and people think that's so great, and I go, oh, acreage is overrated, trust me. Because half of our property is just wild.
Right.
Because the cost to try to not make it wild and maintain it and make it beautiful is just, you just can't do it. So my property taxes on 5 acres are for the coyotes and the bears and the love of nature, right? And it's but anyway, looking at these pastures, and we have the animals. They add to the ambiance of Chateau Lill, but they're also trying to mow and do their job.
Yeah.
Otherwise then I'd be paying a mower to mow all that, right? So we're helping reduce the carbon footprint with our animals, and
the aesthetics.
And again, it just adds to the.
I think there's a beauty in the
ambience.
wildness, right? I mean, you want to be in nature and just feel kind of like, okay, you can kind of unplug a little bit. And just, if that's in your back door, your back garden, that's lovely.
Yeah. So maybe I should come up with gazebo spot.
There you go.
And people could just, come with their bottle of wine and rent the gazebo
brilliant.
space for their hour, and nobody else bugs you at the time.
Just have the gazebo.
I think that's
brilliant.
Yeah,
How many
absolutely.
gazebos can you fit on there?
Well, we have one decent sized one right now.
I know.
I think the idea is one, and everybody else
yeah,
just disappears.
All
You
right.
just
I
get
was
it.
thinking about growing the business.
Well, that's you, the entrepreneur. I like it. I like it. Well, I mean, those are great gems that people. I mean, even the wine tasting. I wasn't sure. I knew that you had the venue there for the events, and you have your wine. But that was going to be one of my questions. Was, can people wine taste? Well, the answer to that is yes, and I feel like it's actually a hidden gem.
It kind of is, yeah, because it's up on the, as you're looking at the chateau, it's over the pasture to the right, and then up by the barn, and then you'll see the tables and the umbrellas and everything. But it's a great little outdoor spot, great little view of the valley, like I said.
That's a great view there.
And
for sure.
got the cashmere goats right next door. And,
Okay.
And a lot of people just kind of go, I never knew this was here.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, because you're driving by at 50 miles an hour.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's 40, it's the speed
Oh,
limit. You're going
sorry.
50.
I usually.
Hence the
They just recently changed it to 40, didn't
They did,
they?
yeah.
Yeah.
Was it 35 before that,
No,
Troy?
it's 50. Everyone seems to go 25 though. It's just like, what's up with that?
I couldn't tell you.
All
I
right.
couldn't tell you. All right, well, this was a wonderful conversation. I've learned so much about wine today and about Chateau Lill. I can't wait to go up and check it all out.
Yeah,
So,
you should.
I will be there with bells on. We're going to take a really quick break, and when we come back, we're going to tackle our real estate roundup.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right, we'll be right back after this very short break.
Hey, homeowners and aspiring buyers looking for a real estate team who are about you and your community? Look no further than Tend Home Team. We're here to help you navigate the sometimes overwhelming world of real estate. From buying to selling, we've got your back. Let's work together to find your dream home or sell your current one. Contact us today, tendhometeam.com. let's get started.
Welcome back to TLC, 10 Life Community Podcast. We've just had some wonderful wine with Greg Lill from Chateau Lill. We've talked about his wine, we've talked about his venue, but now we're going to pivot and talk about real estate in our real estate roundup section. Okay, Troy, are you ready for the question of the week?
I think so, yeah.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So a theme that we're hearing and have been hearing for quite some time from buyers is that they are hesitant to buy because the market is going to crash, so they're going to wait. What do you have to say about that?
Well, before we get into that, I'd like to tell a story about
Go ahead.
when I first met Greg. He didn't know I was going to tell him the story. But it was 1998. I was working in Acura car dealer, and I had a friend, Lance Bear, and he was getting into wine, and I was getting into wine, and we thought we'd come up to Woodinville and help till they'll crush their grapes. So this was 1998. So if you have a bottle of D2, I've got my stamp on it. Yeah. And I think it was him. Your dad was there. He brought pizza. I remember that vividly. And Chris Upchurch was the winemaker, and they had this. Bill Clinton was in office, and they had this wine pump, and they named it Monica.
Oh dear.
Yeah. So, very, very fun memory from way back when.
I have that pump in our wine room at the Chateau.
Do you? Monica lives on.
Wow. Okay. that was your first foray into making wine?
Into helping, yeah. Just I liked drinking it, and then Lance was actually wanted to get into wine making, and so I kind of tagged along with him to do that, and he ended up starting a winery.
Yeah. So we could almost say that, Greg's family was kind of the catalyst for getting you really excited about wine and getting your... Is it viticulture you've got, or is it?
I've got
enology?
the enology
You've got
degree.
enology
Yeah,
degree. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, no, great story. Thanks for sharing that with us and our listeners.
Yes. Now, what was your question?
The market's going to crash.
Oh, the sky is falling. Chicken Little. No. The market is not going to crash, and there's 5 reasons why that I can think of. And there's probably more, but inventory levels are really low right now. I did some research for the show because I knew you were going to ask me this. But there's only 1.2 months of inventory in King County and 1.1 months worth of inventory in Snohomish County. So what that means basically is like inventory on the grocery store shelf, right?
Right.
If grocery store wasn't going to stock their shelves anymore, it would take a month to sell out of the inventory. And we consider a balanced market, not a buyer's market, not a seller's market, about 4 months. Some call it 6 months of inventory. So we're still have a shortage of housing per the demand that's out there. And we look at that every month, and it's been, when we saw the real estate market turn about this time last year, the inventory level started spiking up. We had close to 4 months in August of last year. So we've definitely come down. And we've actually seen prices, they went down. From June height of last year through December. And then we started to see them rise again in January this year as buyers got back into the market, even with the higher interest rates. And inventory levels just haven't caught up. So that's one reason. Builders, what it takes to build a house these days, it costs a lot of time. It costs a lot of money too, but it costs a lot of time. So builders aren't starting their projects, and when they do start a project, it could take 2 or 3 years to have a plat built out. And I don't know if you've looked around the Pacific Northwest at all, but there's not a lot of buildable land left within the urban growth boundary. Most of the projects I'm seeing, the larger plats, are definitely on hillsides. There's a lot of dirt work, a lot of expense that goes into that, and it takes time. And there's a lot and there are some spot lots that are going on, but that definitely is not going to help with the shortage of inventory for the demand.
Okay.
And what else did I write down here? Demographic trends. So a lot of the buyers, there's a strong demand for them to get into bigger homes because more people are working from home now. And they've decided that the one office isn't going to work because I've got a spouse and
potentially there's 2 people working from home.
2 people working from home. You got kids,
dogs,
everything else going on. So you're going to need that extra bedroom. So we've seen a lot of people want to transition that way. Also the lending standards have been strict over the last 10 years. So the housing bubble in 2007 through 2010, it was fog and mirror loans, and we called them liar loans, where you just basically told the bank how much you made, and they said, okay, great, we'll give you a loan. And so we saw huge foreclosures through like 2014. It was in the lending standards over the last 10 years have been so strict. You have to have a great credit score, you have to have equity, you have to put money down on the property, you have to actually have a job. So households now have way more equity, way more options, so they're not going to be fire selling any homes. There's not going to be foreclosures. Although you see in the news the clickbait, foreclosures are up 100%, Pam.
Yeah, that's actually 1%, Troy.
Yeah, they went from 1% to 2%. So whatever they can do to get you to buy in on their headline. But so, yeah, I don't see a lot of foreclosures coming on the market. I don't see people have options, like I said. So I just don't see a huge housing crash.
I think there's so many things that are so different from 2007, 2008. I mean, first of all, the lending thing, that's not going back the way anytime soon, right?
No.
So, those things are in place to safeguard people. And so, I think you have to look at all of the little components as opposed to just thinking, okay, there's a crash coming. And I know from kind of chatting with people that there is really this idea that, okay, the end is coming, but those house prices are never going to shift back down to the rates at, the levels of 2007 and 2008 either, my understanding.
No, I wouldn't see that happening. And the Fed is committed to maybe raising the rate again through the end of 2023. So we might see interest rates go up a little bit. However, as soon as interest rates go down with the shortage of inventory we have on the market, there's going to be a tidal wave of buyers coming into the market, and it's going to cost a lot more.
Yeah.
Because people are going to be going back into bidding wars, and we're seeing that on certain homes today, even the ones that are priced right, in great condition, seeing multiple offers on those.
Okay. So I would say then the moral of that story is that basically if you are somebody that's sitting on the fence and thinking that there is this big crash coming because you're listening to the clickbait and everything else, the reality of it is it's probably not going to happen. I mean, we can't say definitely. Troy does not have a crystal ball, although I'm sure he wishes he did. But
some days.
Some days you do? Okay, great.
I've been doing this long enough to know that, as soon as you realize the market's changed, it's too late to make it.
Yeah.
So I think now is a great time to get into a property, lock it up, and potentially refinance in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
When rates go down.
Yeah. So if you are one of those people sitting on the fence and that's the thing that's holding you back, it's probably worth talking to somebody about it and kind of really figuring that out, that what you think is going to happen probably isn't, and so you might miss the boat.
Yeah.
Okay.
And end up paying more.
Yeah.
And not living in the house that you want to live in. So.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that's all great stuff. So let's let our listeners know how they can find Chateau Lill, how they can get in touch with you, how they can book an event at your space.
The best way is just to go to chateaulill.com.
Okay.
And our event coordinator, Morgan, she'll get in touch with you and have you out for a visit, hopefully, and give you a tour and explain the different options. That's the best way. Or come out for wine tasting. We're open Friday through Sunday, 11 to 4 for wine tasting right now. And so you can come on out. It's great if you go online, you can make a reservation, or you could just drop in.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Now, where else can people find your wine? I forgot to ask that.
Well, that's kind of one of the fun things that we decided to do, is not have our wines out there everywhere. So really the only place you can find them is at Chateau Lill.
Oh.
Exclusive. I like it.
Yeah.
That's very bougie.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And you sold out.
And we still even sell out of some ones. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Right. And if somebody has real estate questions,
Yes, real
Troy?
estate questions. tendhometeam.com is the best place to reach us. It's got all of our contact information there, or just Google Troy Anderson as well, and it'll come right up.
And I want to call you?
206-504-3660.
Okay, and if you enjoyed the show, do you want to hear more, you can like, share, and subscribe. You can find us on YouTube at Tend Home Team, or on any of your favorite podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, you name it, we're there.
Yes, please like and share and subscribe.
All right. Well, thanks very much. Great conversation.
Thanks, Greg.
Fantastic wine.
Thank
Loved
you.
it. Until next time, we'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hi there, podcast listeners. Are you in the market for a new home or looking to sell your current one? Well, we have the perfect solution for you. Introducing Tend Home Team, your go-to real estate company here in the Pacific Northwest. With over 20 years of experience, our team of experts know the local market inside and out, and we pride ourselves on being community focused so you can trust us to find the perfect home for you and your family. Whether you're a first-time homebuyer or a seasoned homeowner, Tend Home Team has got you covered. Our passion for real estate and commitment to provide an exceptional service will ensure a stress-free experience every step of the way. So why wait? Give us a call or visit our website today and let Tend Home Team help you find your dream home. We can't wait to hear from you. 206-504-3660 or tendhometeam.com.